Thank you very much, Simon. Good morning. Gloomy, grotty old morning out there in beds, hearts and bucks today, isn't it? Horrible. Coming up at 11 today, I'll be dealing with your consumer problems. And as the government medical chief says baby boomers should work longer to stay healthy, I'll ask whether you think it's time we all worked into our 70s. First, though, medical chiefs in Denmark say they want to ban circumcision for boys until they are at least 18 years old and can make their own decision as to whether or not they want the procedure. Scandinavian campaigners say that when parents have their little boys circumcised, it robs their sons of the ability to make decisions about their own bodies and choose their cultural and religious beliefs for themselves. Liz Moller is chair of the Doctors Association Ethics Board. She says it's wrong to deny an individual the right to choose whether or not they wanted to be circumcised. The Danish Health and Medicines Authority estimates that somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 circumcisions are performed in Denmark every year, primarily on Jewish and Muslim boys. The majority of those procedures occur outside of the public health system and are done as part of the religious ceremony in the child's home or in a private clinic. Well, circumcision is an issue which has caused much controversy here in Beds, Herts and Bucks. Mike Buchanan is from Bedford. He runs the Justice for Men and Boys Party. He wants us to go further than the Danes and ban all circumcision unless there is a real medical need. Well, we'll listen to what he has to say very shortly, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well. Should we follow the Danes and try to ban circumcision for boys under 18? Here's the telephone number for your call. It's 03459 455 555. You can text me with your view this morning on 81333. Start your text with 3CR. Texts are charged at standard network rate. You can email me here at the BBC, jvsshow@bbc.co.uk. And you'll find me on Twitter, twitter.com/JVS Show. Should we follow the Danes and try to ban circumcision for boys under 18?
The JVS Show.
Call Jonathan Vernon-Smith now.
03459 455 555.
The JVS Show.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
And a little later on in this hour, as the government medical chief says baby boomers should work longer to stay healthy, I'll ask whether you think it's time we all worked into our 70s. But first in this hour, I want to discuss the rights and wrongs of circumcision. Why are we discussing this today? Well, I'll tell you. Medical chiefs in Denmark say they want to ban circumcision for boys until they are at least 18 years old and can make their own decision as to whether or not they want the procedure. Scandinavian campaigners say that when parents have their little boys circumcised, it robs boys of the ability to make the decision about their own bodies and choose their cultural and religious beliefs for themselves. Liz Moller is chair of the Doctors Association Ethics Board, and she says it's wrong to deny any individual the right to choose whether or not they want to be circumcised. The Danish Health and Medicines Authority estimates that somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 circumcisions are performed in Denmark each year, primarily on Jewish and Muslim boys. Well, the majority of those procedures occur outside of the public health system, and they're done as part of a religious ceremony in the child's home or in a private clinic. Circumcision is an issue that's caused an awful lot of controversy here in the Three Counties. Mike Buchanan is from Bedford. He runs the Justice for Men and Boys Party. He wants us to go further than the Danes and ban all circumcision unless there is a real medical need. Well, let's listen to what he has to say, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well. Should we follow the Danes and try to ban circumcision for boys under 18? 03459 455 555. That's the telephone number. Before I take your calls, let's speak to Mike Buchanan from Bedford, runs the Justice for Men and Boys Party. He'd like to ban all non-medically essential circumcision. Good morning to you, Mike.
Yes, good morning, Jonathan.
Why do you have such a problem with circumcision?
Well, it's unnecessary, unethical. It causes physical and psychological damage in many males. But it's also illegal. It's illegal under the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. And people often think, Jonathan, that because prosecutions are not brought for it, it must be legal, but that's simply not the case. It's just that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service refuse to bring prosecutions against the criminals who are carrying out this butchery.
Well, you use very emotive language there, but there are many people. I use
emotive language because I use emotive language, Jonathan, because these people are butchering they are mutilating the genitals of healthy babies. When it comes to baby girls, people instinctively recoil from that and understand that is wrong on so many levels. And yet, because these are males and therefore subhuman in the eyes of the state, they have no protection from the state.
But there will be many, many men listening to this programme this morning who will have been circumcised as children and for whom it will have had no problems. They don't feel that there's any kind of issue whatsoever. And when you start talking about people butchering their children, they just won't identify with that kind of strong language.
Jonathan, the majority of women who've undergone female genital mutilation or female circumcision are also perfectly happy with it. But we don't use that as an argument to allow communities to circumcise their female babies. Why the double standard?
Let me bring Natan Levy in, who's a rabbi and head of operations for Faith Forum. Morning to you, Natan. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
So you hear Mike Buchanan there describing circumcision as butchering of young children. Do you agree that it does seem very cruel to take a perfectly healthy little boy and to cut a part of his body off when there's no medical need to do so?
I got to disagree with Mike. As someone who is myself circumcised, I don't feel like there's been any issues. In fact, I bet Mike would have a really hard time finding any males out there who've had issues with circumcision. This is an age-old practice. It goes back 3,000 years. Mike, feel free to tell me, is there ever been a case of someone who has been mutilated, who has been killed because of circumcision in this country? And the answer is there is none. It's very different than what's happening with female genital mutilation, which is an entirely different case. And what happens usually is it's very simple for the critics of circumcision to lump these two categories together when they're very different, when the females themselves will say they don't want that to happen. Whereas for the males who have been circumcised, this is a practice that goes back 3,000 years and has serious benefits, cleanliness, with being a little crude about it.
Rubbish.
I said it's better in the bedroom. But there's very little to say that by you're mutilating. In fact, you're keeping an age-old religious tradition, and that is not butchery, and it's not unethical.
Okay, well, let's talk about age-old religious traditions. I mean, in the Torah, the things that are punishable by death, including cheating on your husband, homosexuality, blasphemy, insulting parents, disobeying parents.
We're not talking about any of those things, Mike. We're just talking about this simple.
But why?
Carried out in a sterile environment, and in this country, it's not illegal.
No, but Natan, Mike has a point, doesn't he? That if you're going to use the justification that it's an age-old practice, when he has given you an example of other age-old practices that we would now consider to be absolutely outrageous, you've then just dismissed that.
So there is what to say that our religions are constantly evolving and developing as they go on. This one has been shown again and again to have a lot of benefits. Health. I'm sorry. Very little downside to what's happening. Now, I guess there is someone who's complaining about their circumcision and calling it butchery, but amongst my Orthodox community, that's not the case.
No, I'm sorry, but men are shamed out of admitting the problems they have. 10 years ago, the British Medical Association wrote, in the past, circumcision of boys has been considered to be either medically or socially beneficial, or at least neutral. The general perception has been that no significant harm was caused to the child, and therefore, with appropriate consent, it could be carried out. The medical benefits previously claimed, however, have not been convincingly proven, and it is now widely accepted, including by the BMA, that this surgical procedure has medical and psychological risks. It is essential that doctors perform male circumcision only when it is demonstrably in the best interest of the child.
Or its religious significance for the parents and for the community. Now, I think you're not taking into account the fact that this praxis is amongst a human right that we have as people of religion.
Natan, if you're talking about human rights, the UN and EU conventions on human rights, are very much against this, and this is illegal. I return to the point that this practice is illegal. Please, Natan, let me finish.
That you've spoken about.
Please, Natan, let me finish the legal point. It is undoubtedly the case that this is illegal under the Offences Against the Person Act 1861, and there are no exemptions in the courts of England and Wales for religious or cultural considerations, none.
And that's why in this country or any other country, there have been broad persecution against people who do circumcision, which are all under the legal code, there is a whole society, which the Medical Association has advanced. There's doctors who do this procedure every single day here in the UK.
Okay, so Natan, can I just put to you, do you believe then that female genital circumcision, is that acceptable?
Female genital circumcision is not acceptable. It's entirely
according to you, but of course there are other people who feel that because of their religion, it is absolutely a part of their life and it is something that must be done. So why are they wrong and yet you're right?
Because the pain that's caused. The pain is caused during childbirth, much to the woman years later. So when there is an issue of causing deep scars and pain to people, then we're in a different conversation.
Natan, one of my colleagues had his little boy circumcised, and he described the scream as his boy was circumcised to be so bad that he had to walk into another room because he couldn't bear it.
During the process itself, yes, you're right, but there is no long-term negative effects of circumcision. It's been proven again and again.
They're nonsense, absolute nonsense. I mean, in the 12th century, Rabbi Moses Maimonides made it perfectly clear what the purpose of circumcision was, and that's to reduce the sexual pleasure of adult males. So they're more likely to be faithful to their wives. This is Moses Maimonides.
Mike, you're using a 12th century outdated rabbi to prove your point? Is there something about what you do in Montana?
No, this is an outdated practice. So
can you bring something a little bit more modern?
Practice, so it seems appropriate.
I don't think the Rambam had his facts quite right, and if that's all you got, something from 800 plus years ago, then I think your argument fails on that point.
Natan, you must be aware that there's a big movement of intactivists in the US, the UK, and elsewhere, and we shall shortly be protesting outside the Thornhill Clinic in Luton, which is the number one circumcision clinic in the country, and we recently protested in Golders Green. We protested in Golders Green.
What's happening here isn't an issue about circumcision, and it's not about religion. It's really an attack upon mostly Muslims and people of faith. That's what's happening here, and what Mike is getting cut into, especially by going to a place like Luton, which is going to antagonize.
Hang on, Natan, I must pick you up on that. That seems on the face. That seems on the face of it like a bit of a low blow. It seems as if you're now accusing Mike of some kind of attack on religion rather than what he's actually talking about, which is circumcision. I haven't heard him say anything anti-Jew, anti-Muslim at all.
This is by going to the place in Luton, where a place where there's a very fragile structure of communal engagement where people are trying to embrace the diversity of that community, to go to Luton and say what they're doing, especially amongst the Muslim population there, is somehow wrong or bad, is a direct attack upon them, in my personal opinion.
Mike, how do you respond to that accusation?
It's not a personal attack on. It's not an attack on any religion. It's
all the issues that are hurting young people.
Please, Natan, I didn't interrupt you.
Why not have a protest about child abuse? Why not have a protest about female genital mutilation, about slavery for young people? There's so many issues affecting our young people today. To take one,
well, female genital
negative consequence seems like, I guess if we all had a lot of free time, we would all be doing those things. But issue. Caused for young people to take on this one. Don't you have anything better to do with your time and your protest?
In July, we held the second international conference on men's issues in London. We had people from 20 countries, and we had 20 speakers. One of them was a guy who's been campaigning in this area for 30 years, Tim Hammond, and he gave a talk on his global survey of infant circumcision harm. And I defy anyone to watch that video. It's on our website. I defy anyone to watch that video and say that this evil practice is harmless.
It's very easy, isn't it, to throw around terms like butchery and evil and unethical. But in point of fact,
I'm talking about Natan. I'm talking about a global survey of circumcision harm, and I'm very sure you haven't watched it and you won't watch it. But if people want to learn about what harm circumcision leads to, they should watch that video.
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Natan. We're not quite sure why. We'll see if we can get him back. But you're not prepared to just let this lie then, Mike. You're going to continue with your campaign. I mean, I've spoken to you a couple of times in the past. Yeah. You're going to continue to ramp up your campaign until what? You see the law changed and circumcision is banned in this country?
Yes, I'll say it's already illegal, but we'd like to see it made specifically illegal in the same way that female genital mutilation was in 1985. And back in June, I was arrested in Parliament Square during a protest that we had against male genital mutilation. I should be appearing at Isleworth Crown Court in January because even government departments, Jonathan, do not deny that this is illegal. We've sent plenty of freedom of information requests. And the government is not denying that this is an illegal practice. It just will not bring prosecutions.
Okay, Natan is back on the other line. Natan, we lost you for a second. I just want to put to you a text, if I may, from David. David says, circumcision was considered more hygienic by ancient Semitic tribes in sandy deserts where they didn't have bathing facilities. I mean, would you accept that clearly things have changed now?
Well, I hear David's point, but as an Orthodox rabbi, I mean, I only speak for myself and my community. This 3,000-plus year tradition, which has been part of our culture for a very long time, and as we said, has no real side effects. The Jewish people, like the Muslim community, have been doing this for thousands of years. Whatever the initial reason for it, now it is part of our basic religious rights. And that goes within the human rights category.
But with the greatest of respect, you haven't actually answered the question. I mean, if ultimately
it makes no difference where it came from. I can't look back in time and say,
you don't really care about the facts.
What in terms of what I care about as a rabbi is something that's part of my tradition, my culture, and my rights as a human being, as under religious and human ethical requirements.
Is there just one final question to you? Is there anything anyone could ever say to you that would change your mind on this?
That's a great question. What a good question. If it turned out that time after time after time, grown men were in great pain because of the circumcision of their youth, that would make a difference. But
the fact that a father can take his little son that he has helped to create, that a mother can take a little boy that she has produced, and they can take them and put that little boy through no medical requirement, but still gives that child absolute excruciating pain, you think that's acceptable?
I think that in some particular instances, if there is no long-term negative repercussions, yes, it is. Because what's being honored here is a beautiful religious tradition that's gone back for 3,000 years.
Why beautiful?
Because at some deep level, this is and I'll use religious language here, a covenant between a particular people and with God. And that is not easily turned aside from.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting speaking to both of you. Mike Buchanan, who is from Bedford and runs the Justice for Men and Boys Party. Natan Levy is rabbi and head of operations for Faith Forum. Well, over to you. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you make of this? Would you like to see us do something similar to the Danes and try to ban circumcision for boys under 18? Or do you agree with what Natan was saying there, that actually circumcision is beautiful? It's something that should be preserved. It is an ancient tradition. It's so important. It's a wonderful thing. And we should never, ever allow anybody like Mike to drive it out of this country. M from Milton Keynes texts to say, yes, we should ban all circumcision on babies. Otherwise, we have sexual discrimination. Unequal law, and we will never stop female genital mutilation. This person wants to withhold their identity. I was circumcised as a 2-year-old child for health reasons. It made me feel like a freak, ridiculed and ashamed for 30 years before I came to terms with it. It is outrageous to do it purely for religious reasons. Steve emails to say, it's clearly as wrong to mutilate little boys as it is little girls. But what's the point in introducing another law that will never be enforced? There's not been a single conviction in the UK against those who subject their children to female genital mutilation simply because the state chooses to turn a blind eye. I've had several girlfriends who were lightly circumcised. One in particular was totally dead down below. It's all wrong, but our governments will never do anything about it, says Steve. Well, phone lines are open for your calls as always, 03459 455 555. Should we follow the Danes and try to ban circumcision for boys under the age of 18?
Call Jonathan Vernon-Smith now.
03459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
We've been talking about circumcision. Medical chiefs in Denmark say they want to ban circumcision for boys until they are at least 18 years of age and can make their own decision as to whether or not they want the procedure. Scandinavian campaigners say that when parents have their little boys circumcised, it robs them of the ability to make decisions about their own bodies and choose their cultural and religious beliefs for themselves. Lise Moller is chair of the Doctors Association Ethics Board. She says it's wrong to deny an individual the right to choose whether or not they want to be circumcised. Well, the Danish Health and Medicines Authority estimates that somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 circumcisions are performed in Denmark every single year, primarily on Jewish and Muslim boys. The majority of these procedures occur outside the public health system there, apparently, and are done as part of a religious ceremony in the child's home or in a private clinic. And I think the same can be said for here. But my question to you is, should we follow the Danes in this country and try to ban circumcision for boys under the age of 18, or is there no need? Let me read this email before I get back to your calls. Patrick emails to say, the circumcision that it was imposed upon me by my late parents, who were not Jewish or Muslim, profoundly affected me as a young man and continues to affect me nearly 60 years later. I didn't know much about circumcision until I was over 50. But when I began to research it, I could clearly see how much it had negatively impacted me psychologically and sexually without me being consciously aware, because I never knew what life would have been like with the whole penis that I was born with. I am appalled that this body modification was imposed on me without my consent, and all the information that I have now discovered was not disclosed to me by those who solicited it on my behalf and those who actually inflicted it upon me. Religion and the medical establishment that tactfully supports this human rights abuse, they have a lot to answer for, says Patrick. Thank you very much. Well, Mohammed in Luton has called to have his say. Good morning, Mohammed.
Hello, JVS. Good morning.
Hello. What are your thoughts on circumcision? Would you like to see it banned here?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I totally disagree with female circumcision. You know, it's something that's forbidden with all the religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But on the other hand, male circumcision is something that I agree with. You know.
Mohammed, you don't sound like a dimwit. So just explain to me, take religion out of it for 1 second. I want you to answer this question without referring to religion in any way, shape or form. Answer me from a logical perspective why it's different to cut a female's genitals and cut a male's genitals. Just answer why that's different.
The male foreskin has no use or benefit on the human body.
Yes, it does.
It doesn't.
Yes, it does.
And what is that?
It protects the penis.
No, having the foreskin cut actually stops dirt from gathering inside your.
Well, if you're a normal human being, you wash it like you wash every other part of your body.
Of course you wash it.
If you don't wash any part of your body, then you stand the chance of infection, you stand the chance of causing problems with your body. So if you're a normal human being, you wash it on a daily basis, and therefore there is no... It's simply wrong to say that the foreskin does not serve any purpose. And may I just say, if we just bring religion back into the conversation, if you are religious, why do you believe that your creator created you with a foreskin if it was unnecessary?
Well, he created us, with a foreskin, and he gave us guidelines to follow. And basically,
but why would a God create a human being with a part of their body that was unnecessary?
That's something he desired, But on the your guy who was speaking, Mike, I totally disagree with him. Circumcision is a part of cleanliness, and it's.
Why is it a part of cleanliness?
It's been proven by
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
By the prophets before us in the religion, Christianity.
Well, I'm sure if you're growing up in the desert somewhere without running water and where sand is blowing around, then I'm sure it is probably easier for you to not have parts of your skin where sand and dirt can get trapped underneath. But we live in Great Britain where we have running water, we have soap, we have shower gel, and we don't live in the desert.
Yeah, they had soap in them days. They had water. It was the same thing, but it was just different times. And basically, your caller, Mike, could I ask, has he got any religion at all?
I have no idea. He's not here now. Why does that matter? He was arguing purely from a physical perspective rather than from a religious perspective.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I don't think it will be banned in this country.
So Mohammed, let's just go back because it's very interesting. And so you are a man who I would imagine has been circumcised.
Of course, definitely.
Right. You say of course. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Personally, I think it improves. It improves your ability, sexual ability, and to be honest with you, if you ask, for example, 100 females out on the streets which have slept with both circumcised male and uncircumcised male, I'm sure 85% of them would say they would rather sleep with a circumcised male.
Well, you might have a point there. You might have a point because I understand one of the things that happens when you're circumcised, and you're talking to a man who is not circumcised. Okay. And I have to point out, Mohammed, I've never had an infection down there, and it's all perfectly clean. I'll let you know that now. But I understand one of the things that can happen from being circumcised is that a man loses some of the sensitivity in his sexual organ.
No, I have never experienced that.
Well, sorry, just to go back to the argument you just made, why then would a man be a better sexual performer if he's been circumcised?
I have no idea. That's just,
why on earth did you just pluck that out when you can't back it up with any thinking behind it?
It's from experience, Females prefer males who are circumcised.
And why do you think that might be?
It goes back to the point again. The foreskin has no use on the human body.
No. You haven't answered the question correctly yet. Why do you think that women might prefer to have sexual intercourse with a man who has been circumcised?
Well, maybe they feel it's more cleaner, and the person has is.
So you don't think it's got anything to do with the fact that if a man has lost some of his sensitivity of his penis, that the sex is likely to go on for longer?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. David Smith is the manager of 15 Square, a charity to help men who've been damaged physically and psychologically by circumcision. Let me just put that point to him. Good morning to you, David.
Morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. Mohammed making a point there, and I've heard people say that. I've heard women say this before. Women have told me that they have enjoyed sex more with men who have been circumcised than men that haven't been circumcised, largely because the sex lasts for longer. Is that not a reason to circumcise?
Well, sometimes it lasts for so long that they cannot actually climax. We've had this discussion quite frequently with men.
Sorry, could you talk into the phone, David, rather than have us all on speakerphone, please?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. Yes, we've had men who've been so damaged that they can't actually reach a climax. It just goes on forever and ever, and they get very sore. There's all sorts of damage that's inflicted by circumcision. It's the tip of the iceberg, really. I mean, we've got 26 lever arch files in our office that are actually full of stories from men who've been damaged by circumcision. There's all sorts.
But I'm hearing, I've got in front of me, I've got a sea of text messages that are coming in from men in Beds, Herts and Bucks who've been circumcised and who say, what's the problem? There's no issue with it. You're making something out of nothing.
I think the issue here is the issue of consent. I mean, we've got no problem with somebody who, when they reach the age of 18, if they want to have themselves circumcised for whatever reason, that's fine. But I think that the Danish thing, it's not saying that you shouldn't circumcise. What they're saying is that it should be the owner of the penis who makes the decision, not somebody on their behalf.
But when you have a circumcision at the age of 18, it is a massive operation. It's an incredibly painful operation. I know this because I have a friend who was circumcised. I think actually he might have been 20, and I mean he said it was absolute agony, and it went on like this for ages and ages and ages. It was a really big thing. Whereas people tell me who've had their little babies circumcised, yes, okay, it's a few days of discomfort and then it's all over.
The damage. Nobody. They used to say that babies didn't feel pain. Now they know different. And it can manifest itself several years later. I mean, we have several people who suffer from PTSD. They have flashbacks. It is known that when babies have trauma, that they go into shock, and so it's repressed and it comes out very much later. You're operating on a very small baby. There's no line that says cut here, and there's all sorts of damage that can be caused that isn't necessarily apparent until the child reaches puberty.
But when you vaccinate a child, for example, you're sticking a needle or maybe a number of needles into their arm. Children will often scream as well, the shock, the pain of it. We do it because ultimately we consider it to be in the child's best interest. And I don't remember too many people ever having suffered with post-traumatic stress disorder with flashbacks of when they were vaccinated as a baby.
Yeah, well, in a vaccination is very different from a circumcision. With a circumcision, you're actually amputating tissue. You're not actually...
Yeah, but we're still talking about painful procedures for babies that make the babies scream.
Yes. I mean, I can't really answer that. All I know is about circumcision and the lasting damage. I mean, there's been obviously studies about vaccine, but as I say, circumcision is very different. You're actually causing a wound, an open wound that can get infected. You're actually amputating essential tissue. Vaccination doesn't do that.
OK, all right. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much, David. Dan in Luton says, JVS, any religion that uses this barbaric idea is basically saying that their God has made a mistake in making the boy or girl as they are. I think it's sick. As far as I'm concerned, it is child abuse, says Dan. Well, as always, if you want to drop me a line with your thoughts on anything you hear us discussing on the JVS Show, you can do. I love getting your emails. jvsshow@bbc.co.uk.
On FM, AM, digital and online.
This is Jonathan Vernon-Smith
On BBC Three Counties Radio.